Alright, so you've seen some of the footage. Let's have a quick look at the build as to how I'm currently rocking it. So the main weapon that you're going to have seen in the gameplay, all of that is going to have been the liquid cooling. And the liquid cooling is such a good pistol. It really is top notch as to, like, in this game. It really is that good, and I highly recommend that you grab yourself one of these. The ×2 is probably better than the one single shot variant. But as long as you can get hold of either, then you're absolutely you're pretty much good as golden, and that'll basically be one of your main weapons. Now, what you can do instead is, if you can't get yourself a liquid cooling, other weapons that can actually be pretty good are going to be the any kind of like purple variant SMG that actually is in frost. Because this actually gives you, instead of it being like a laser beam, it allows you to be able to have kind of like a Sandhawk kind of thing, if you can remember that from Borderlands 2, or the sniper rifle from Borderlands 3, and overall it's pretty decent, and I've got that so it increases my fire damage as well. If I also have a look in, I've had decent luck with the crossblade, but the crossblade I kind of fallen out of favour with as soon as I got myself the liquid cooling and realising how good that actually is. Other things that you can use, I know I've got one in my inventory somewhere, it's probably in my stash, is going to be the Rain of Arrows, and the Rain of Arrows is a very good shotgun to be able to use, but just keep in mind that this is area damage, and it's fixed area damage, so it's not actually going to be a decent range weapon, it's just going to purely be there to be able to take on like static kind of enemies and all that kind of thing, but it is very strong, it is very good, and definitely if you can get yourself a melee that allows you to be able to have amp shots, even better. So it's always a nice weapon to be able to fall back on when it comes to that. With the melee, I'm using a Diamond Guard sword. The reason why for this is because of the perk of Diamond Guard. I'm going to be doing another video on this, and make sure you keep your eyes out for that one, where melee attacks deal random elemental damage and increase your status effect application. So that's definitely something to be able to keep an eye out for, because that interaction with the Clawbringer is actually very, very nice, and definitely going to be doing some more work on that just to see if we can actually get that broken or something. In terms of actual gear, because we are a gun build, we definitely want to be able to stacking up our gun damage. So the main things that you want to focus on if you are using the liquid cooling will be gun damage and then pistol critical hit damage. If you can get pistol critical chance in there as well, even better, but I haven't managed to find that perfect god roll just yet, so gun damage and critical hit damage is the main things to be able to focus on. And I've got that for both of them. I also have an SMG critical hit just in case I ever need to fall back on my my purple epic SMG for frost and all that, so it actually gives me a little bit of a damage boost there. When it comes to the necklace, once again we're going for gun damage, and I've also gone for all damage dealt, so this really helps to be able to keep, obviously, you know, do as much damage as physically possible when it comes to the liquid cooling. So I'd probably replace the dark magic efficiency if I can, but unfortunately I haven't managed to find that roll just yet. I'd also replace the legendary itself, because whenever you deal melee damage you have a 30% chance to reload 100% of your current gripped guns ammo. That barely comes into play, so I'd highly recommend you find like a different effect on that. Even a purple is absolutely fine when you go for this kind of thing. The main spell that we are planning to use is the Buffmeister. Now, the Buffmeister obviously has got a bit of a bad rap for the fact that spell shots are able to use ambihextrous to be able to use the Buffmeister to stupid extents in this game so far. But we're actually just purely using it. Basically, we want a fire version of the Buffmeister, and we also want something where using like action skill or something like that increases our damage even further. The reason why is because we want direct damage to be increased, our direct fire damage to be increased, because our main thing with the Clawbringer is obviously fire damage, and obviously with the skill tree, and we'll show that off in a second. Now, I've got this chaotic one that actually does come with 2 spell charges, which is quite nice, but it does have a severely long cooldown, but it just means that I've got one pretty much always on hand, ready to be able to pop just in case I actually do need something. So I'd highly recommend looking for one of those, but 1 spell charge is absolutely fine. You don't necessarily need the 2, but if you can get 2, even better. When it comes to the main chest piece, obviously, what we'll be looking at is a Clawbringer and the THOR-WARDEN, so if you can get both, then even better. I've gone for movement speed, all damage dealt, and fire rate. I am looking for one that gives me additional weapon damage, and I'll probably replace that with the fire rate, just to be able to obviously deal even more damage, because the 10% fire rate is kind of negligible because I'm not stacking anything on top of it just yet, and the skill tree is able to stack fire rate by itself even better. So it's better to have something that increases your damage rather than your fire rate over there. The legendary thing on this is just pointless because we aren't using Hydra Companions, so you can feel free to ignore that. I definitely recommend one where it reduces your critical hit chance by 50% and your critical hit damage by 50, and increases that by 50%. That's probably the best one you could probably find. So if you can get yourself a God Roll version of one of those, even better. I can't remember. I think the boss is the robot head, the robot kind of like dragon head that pops up. I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head, but I'm pretty confident that's the place where it's kind of common knowledge to be able to go farm. So make sure you head yourself over there and grab yourself one of those. I've also gone for an afterburner. I'm kind of experimenting with shields because there's a few things that I've been testing out. Some of these I've only just recently picked up, but I was trying the Cursed Wit initially because that gives to increase damage by 100% when enemies are nearby, and obviously when the ward is depleted. So I've got myself a low level one to be able to obviously trigger that as much as possible. So you can use that. I've also got a Last Gasp, obviously, which gives us additional fire rate, gives us and allows us to be able to regenerate ammo even more. I've got a really nice one when it breaks to be able to give us extra gun critical hit damage. So it's a decent one. There's quite a few options that you can obviously give a go for this one, but I've gone for the Afterburner purely based on the fact that it had a decent capacity, it was better stats, and also the fact that I had a decent enchantment, and also the fact that that trigger for 3000 damage times 6 on ward break and ward fill is all fire damage, which obviously we can then enhance through our skill tree. And I was trying to test this out just to see actually how, if this was actually worthwhile, and actually it's not bad. It's actually got me a couple of killing saves to be able to get myself stood back up. So I would, like I said, feel free to have a mess about with what shield you feel like is more comfortable for yourself. You can get amp shields, but I feel like some kind of like legendary one with a nice effect is probably best to go for. If we go over to our skills, obviously when it comes to the actual character skills or the hero stats, I've primarily gone into strength and I've primarily gone into constitution. The reason why we've gone for those is because we want as high crit damage as possible, and we also want as high survivability as possible because that's what the Clawbringer also excels in. And overall, this is a really nice combination. If you want a third stat to be able to go into, I would recommend skill cooldown. And that's also going to pay dividends into obviously what our skill tree is going to be, because we're allowed to be able to throw out our hammer just so much, so quick, so fast, so much. So if you're planning to be able to start this class and you want to be able to grind your way through this and you're just starting out in Tiny Tina's, make sure you pick up the Village Idiot, and the Village Idiot will give you a nice bonus to crit damage and get yourself started from there. If we have a look into the skill tree though, we've primarily gone for Storm Dragon's Judgment because obviously this is the ability that's able to recharge really quickly. It's able to do range damage, and it's also able to do melee damage, which is actually kind of interesting because that also plays into the effect with the sword. So I prefer this one over it because literally you can throw it out, you can recall it back, and you can refund most of the cooldown, and then through your other skills you're able to get that down to like a 4-second skill cooldown, maybe a 5-second, and obviously if you're killing you're able to get it down even lower. So going from there, we've gone into max for Oath of Fire. Oath of Fire is a really nice fire damage buff, and granted I've got a couple from my armor piece. That gives me a nice, even more fire damage on top of that. We've also gone for Dragon Aura, which increases ourselves and allies elemental damage by 20%, which is very, very nice. I've got the skill points from my armor into Blasphemous Favor. I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting a point into this. If you've got a point spare or you want to be able to have a flex option, feel free to put one in here. But it's when you start getting to the higher Chaos tiers, it doesn't do as much. But the early Chaos tiers, yes, you can definitely get some work done with this as long as you are able to slay out. From there, we've also gone into Firebolt. Firebolt is also quite nice because it gives us a gun damage bonus, but it also allows the companion to deal even more damage on top of that. We've gone for Dedication to be able to reduce, to give us the max amount of cooldown rate for our ability, so this is 25% at maximum ward. We've also gone for a couple of points in Radiance because we had a couple left over, so we've gone in for that, so to be able to give ourselves a little bit of extra shield on top of that for survivability. Moving over to there, we've cross-classed into Spore Warden for this one, which does give us another companion, which is it can be decent, but the fact that you've got 2 targets that enemies have to focus on, so it does give you a little bit of breathing room so enemies can go take on the companions. We've got 5 points or maxed out Bounty of the Hunt, which gives us it's a kill skill, so we get 20% of our cooldown rate for our action skill back when we kill someone. and that's on a duration of 12 seconds. We've gone for max out on Eagle Eye because this is just a flat increase to our gun damage and also our gun handling. We've also gone for Bullseye, which gives us a nice 50% gun critical hit chance, and it also gives our companions the exact same bonus, which is quite nice. So you will see a lot of critical hits popping up on the gameplay in the background. We've also gone for Quiver of Holding, which is the magazine size isn't necessarily that much for the for the liquid cooling. It does give you a little bit of like an extra kind of like period that you're able to fire for, but because of how fast we will be firing, it's kind of negligible in that sense. But what's really important is the ammo regen, because while it isn't much, the fact that you're able to consistently throughout a whole Chaos dungeon be able to restock that ammo allows you to be able to keep fighting, and it is going to be your best gun. Not to say there aren't other options, but it is your best gun to be able to keep going, so it makes sense to be able to keep that up. We've also gone for Windrunner. Windrunner is a lot of fun to be able to mess about with and just allows you to zip around the whole place. So I'd recommend, so if you grab this, get a kill, movement speed and your fire rate is increased, so it turns your gun into a minigun, and it also allows you to be able to zoom around. So you only get 2 stacks with this, so 2 kills is the max you can go, but it gives you a 24% increase to fire rate, gives you a 24% increase to your movement speed, and pair it up with something else to be able to give yourself movement speed. It just means that you can barely be touched, which is great. Cold Shot is going to be our boss killer, is going to be our main way to be able to do that, and the reason why is because when we aim down sights, we gain a stack every single second for additional gun damage and additional damage resistance. So while we're looking down sights, if we hold it down for 10 seconds while we're shooting, which we can get away with the liquid cooling, because obviously it has the ability to be able to cool itself down rather than having to reload or anything like that, we do gain up to 53% gun damage and 51% damage resistance, which is pretty huge, and it just basically allows us to be able to melt some of the bosses, especially when we pair it with obviously the debuffs and all that kind of thing. Just keep in mind that obviously if you're aiming down sights, you can't use your ability, and you also cannot cast any spells. That will take you out of aim down sights, which means you will lose your stacks. So make sure you do those before you aim down sights and you actually start stacking up those for the Cold Shot. We've also got maxed out in Wrath of Nature, because this gives us a nice damage increase to any enemies that get afflicted by our ability, and because we have gone for the hammer, not only is it when you impact an enemy with the hammer on the way there and on the way back, we're also talking about the lightning field that it is able to generate, which means that you're able to inflict this to a lot of enemies and obviously on a short cooldown, which means that you can maximize the amount of damage, kind of like debuff that you're able to put out there, and this will also help with your teammates as well, so this will help you out in those higher chaos levels, especially when you've got teammates around with you. So this whole class is around you debuffing, you buffing up your teammates, and obviously everyone else just having a great time, and obviously you're able to do a massive amount of DPS kind of output. Next we've also got Headhunter, so this increases our gun damage to critical hit areas, so this gives us a very nice 25%, so always aim for the head in majority of cases. And then lastly, because we have a point, I wanted to try play the angles. Now technically you could argue that this is mainly a Spore Warden build, but because of the action skill, because of obviously all this fire damage and all this buffing for teammates, I do primarily think this is a Clawbringer, and the Spore Warden is there to be able to complement everything that the Clawbringer is able to do. The other thing is that I would go for the capstone for Clawbringer, because I think it's okay, but I just don't think that cooldown of 25 seconds is very fair to the Clawbringer, so therefore I don't recommend actually going for that, and until they actually do something about that cooldown, I recommend grabbing Play the Angles. So Play the Angles, when you do gun critical hits, which pretty much is going to be almost every single bullet, every single bullet has a chance to ricochet, dealing reduced ability damage to a nearby enemy, and ricochet shots have a small chance to be able to ricochet an additional time. So you have a 35% chance on any critical hit that you're able to inflict, which obviously the amount of bullets that we're going to be inflicting is just going to be insane. And then every single one that hits then has another 15% chance after that, when it's ricocheted, to be able to then ricochet to another one. So it does 50% of your gun critical hit damage dealt, and obviously because we are stacking into crit damage and all that kind of thing, it's going to be dealing quite a bit of damage. And there you have it. That wraps up the whole kind of like build for you. That wraps up obviously the damage output. That wraps up all the gameplay that you're going to be able to see for the Thor-WARDEN build. Chaos level 20 that obviously is able to complete all the endgame, any kind of challenges that you need it to do. I will happily take this into a raid boss, one of those secret ones that obviously we've done a video about, and make sure you check that video out as well so you know how to be able to enter for those. But I've had such a good time with this build. I genuinely have loved it from start to finish, and the fact that it has the ability to be such good support, and obviously it being such good for like in terms of like damage output for itself in a solo environment really does bring a smile to my face. I especially was happy for the fact that the Clawbringer kind of got a bad rap for obviously being one of the hardest classes to be able to get right, to be able to be one of those that didn't really kind of like stack up compared to all the others. And granted, Ambihextrous is just so strong right now, so there's no class that can really compete with that. But for the time being, once that Ambihextrous gets fixed, I genuinely think that this is probably going to be one of the better builds that's currently out there. So I hope you've enjoyed, I hope you've learned something useful, and I hope you do actually pick this up and give it a go sometime. Obviously, if you did enjoy it, make sure you drop a like and a subscribe. It really does help the channel out. And we will be doing plenty more builds where this come from. In fact, I'm already planning to be able to do a Clawbringer for a melee build. And I'm just grabbing all the pieces together to be able to sort that one out. So make sure you stick around for the channel and keep your eyes peeled for it. Thank you all so much for making this far into the video. And thank you to the Babylonian family, as always, for their continued support. It really does mean the world. And as always, keep yourselves safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on that next video.